Yo, yo, yo. Hey, guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. We spend a lot of time looking at some of the best dental practices in the country. And today, we share a very important metric that tells us way more than we want to know about how good your practice is. Today's title is, do you want more patients or higher APV? Annual patient value. It's the one metric you must focus on for real growth. And we have Dr. Barrett Straub, our CEO, walk us through the details of it. So please listen up. I hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. You know the jam around here, our job is to bring you the best information anywhere in this great industry of ours called dentistry. And our job is to help you decode a lot of these things, help you create a better practice and better life. And we spend so much time thinking about this, studying good practices, coaching practices that are trying to be even better. And today we're going to be talking about metrics and one of the most important metrics in your practice, which is annual patient value, with our CEO, who is also a dentist, Dr. Barrett Straub. Thanks for being back, brother. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Can't wait. I love this metric. It's my new favorite KPI.
I think it's not a new favorite. It's like kind of one of your favorite of all time.
Right. It's been going on for a while here. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the big thing is like metrics matter in a dental practice. And so this has been so much fun because we've created this formula where we've taken a deeper dive on the financial health of dental practices more than ever, called the GAPS formula. And in doing so, we've been able to pinpoint where some of these big leverage points are. And let's start with the big picture of annual patient value. So if you're a dentist listening, I want you to get your brain around this. Barrett, what's annual patient value? What is it?
Yeah, well, quick define it. Annual patient value is, another way to put it is collections per patient, or how much do you collect per active patient. So how you calculate this is you take your current active patients, and active patients are defined as someone who has been into your office at least once in the last 18 months. So let's say you take your active patient count and you simply divide by your collections for the last 12 months. And that is going to give you a dollar figure. And that is the value per active patient.
Yeah. And so go a little bit deeper. Like, if I'm a dentist, like, why do I even need to know that, Barrett?
Right. So if we think about it, all of our patients have a value, and we want to increase that value for a lot of reasons. So knowing your APV, annual patient value, again, it gives you a dollar figure, and it helps us answer a few questions. One of the questions it answers is, where is my revenue coming from? Another way we like to say is, it tells a story of how you got to your gross production. So we often tell this example, and we'll use it again. Let's say we have two practices. They both have production of 1.5 million. Okay. One practice has a high annual patient value, and a high annual patient value means that they need less patients to get to 1.5 million. The other practice, also doing 1.5 million in production, has a low annual patient value. They need a lot more patients to get to that same gross production. So when I say high or low, what numbers are we talking? A low annual patient value might be $300, $200, $300, $400 per annual patient value. A high APV would be 1,000 or north of 1,000. Usually we see our highest performing fee-for-service out-of-network practices producing and have an APV of well north of $1,000. So we're really, APV tells a story of the volume of patients running through your practice that you need or are currently operating with in order to get to your gross production. Now, why does that matter? The next question is, how efficient am I? So if I do a lot of dentistry on a smaller amount of patients, my annual patient value will be high. If I do a little bit of dentistry on a ton of patients, my annual patient value will be low. And there's some efficiency. There's a conversation of efficiency in there.
Yeah. It's so cool because once there's so many ways you could look at this. I often joke that our coaches will look at APV first when they're taking on a new client, because that will give them some indicator of how comprehensive the dentistry is, how good the relationships are. It also speaks to the verbal skills, because if you have an APV, if you're a dentist listening and your APV is 1,100, I can already tell you your team, they're excellent communicators. You also have a very high level of value for what you do. Your team does, and your patients do. I mean, one of the things that's always the theme in our conversation is you don't need every patient. Mm-hmm. APV is a good indicator of these people value you. They're willing to reach into their pockets and spend their discretionary dollars to stay here. They have said, you are my person. I come here not because you're on a list. I value your recommendations. I'm picking up what you're putting down. And so it's bigger. It has so much value, don't you think?
Absolutely. And it's such a great metric to, like you said, quickly diagnose what's happening. There's a couple other questions that it brings to light. And one is, am I seeing my patients frequently enough?
Right.
Number two, are my mix of services robust enough? So if we just think about it, the annual patient value is going to tell us how valuable our patients are. It's going to tell us we talk a lot about the two business models in dentistry. So we talk about the high volume and the low volume. And often the high volume is paired with a lower profit margin and a lower annual patient value. The low volume is usually paired with a high profit margin and thus a high APV. And so one of the questions it answers is, how frequently are my patients coming in? Right. A lot of practices would be beneficial, and the healthcare of their patients would be benefited by more frequent visits. Another thing is, are my services robust enough? Is there a mix of services that would allow me to do more dentistry, more services, more comprehensive care per visit, per hour, per patient? Or do I only do crowns and fillings?
Right.
And so if you have a very, very limited menu, and anytime that patient needs or wants something you don't offer, they have to go elsewhere, by nature, your APV will be low. If we are a high volume practice that is doing a little bit of dentistry per visit, by nature, your APV will likely be lower. And the way to increase APV is do more, be more efficient, be more comprehensive, sell a bigger mix of dentistries. And obviously we have to have the skills to do it and be able to deliver it. But in one metric, there's so much we know about a practice without knowing anything more. We just need this one number. If we know what their gross production is, and we know how many patients they have, and we know their APV, those three things, we can pretty much analyze a practice in terms of the business model they're in.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we could always talk about is just incremental improvements in this. So you don't need to swing for the fence and say, okay, well, now I got to really learn comprehensive dentistry and do like full arches. No, so if you're at 300 and you go to 350, you can multiply that by your entire patient base per se. And now you're already in a different atmosphere, and you improve that again the next year, and now your practice really starts to change. As a buyer, if I'm buying a practice and you're going to sell someday, and I'm like, holy moly, this dentist took the APV from 300 to 900 in a couple of years, that means those patients are going to stay. They're not just going to change with the winds and insurance. So it becomes, again, there's so much value to this. These are real patients that value what you do, and they're going to stay for a long period of time.
So that's such a good point, what you just said there. Let's think about a practice that starts at 300 and over time increases their annual patient value to 900. What is happening there? So one, when we're at 300 and we need or want to produce 1.5 million of gross production, just let's think about basic math. If we have 300 per active patient, we got to get to 1.5. We need a lot of patients.
Right.
If we're at 900 and we want to get to 1.5, we need less patients. Now, there's a comprehensiveness of care and a production per visit per hour that correlates with that. But think of that. Now, what happens as you increase your APV? What does it allow you to do? It allows you not to worry so much about always getting 42 new patients a month. When you increase your APV, what's happening is you're collecting more with the same or even less patients. And so when we have a low APV, we need a lot of new patients because we only do a little bit of dentistry per new patient. When we have a higher APV, we need less new patients. Now, the other side of that coin is we have to diagnose, sell, deliver a more comprehensive level of dentistry. And so you can actually collect more with less patients. I know it's counterintuitive, with a higher APV.
Yeah, you totally can. And I know you're wondering, like, how do we increase APV? We're going to give you a treatment plan here shortly. But like, let me make this even more simple for you. I was a 3-time employee of the month at Applebee's. Okay. Which was one of my greatest.
Legendary.
You would have loved it. Like you would have, if you yourself, you and Katie would have come in, you guys would have been regular customers of mine. You would have said, I like this guy. Now, listen, annual check average was a big deal for servers. So like if you've ever worked at Applebee's, or who cares? Like the point is this, my check average, I was so proud of it because it was double what some of the other servers were. And really, it wasn't about hard selling. It was two things. It was, number one, I had a lot of confidence in how I was communicating and like presenting it. So I believed in it. And number two is like, you had confidence that if I told you something, you were going to get it and it was going to be predictable. So it wasn't like hard selling. It was like, I believed in the product. And then I would always listen to like the server next to me. I'm like, wow, that's really good. How did you do that? That's so cool. And so don't think any more than that. Number one is just growing your communication skills as a team. Number two, having a lot more confidence in what you're talking about. It's valued by other human beings. I'll put one last thread in it before we actually give you the treatment plan. At the end of the day, you have to believe that money spent on dentistry is one of the best investments a human being can make. I believe that. I believe that it's an incredibly awesome, investment. And so if you believe that, your team believes that, your hygienist believes that, your assistant believes that, now you're going to see incrementally people are going to start investing more in you and their own care, and their care is going to get better. So it just keeps going in the right direction. So Barrett, here's the question. All right,
yes, sir.
Break this down. Okay, my APV is not that great. If I'm a dentist listening, like, what do I do?
It's a lot of little steps. And I say that meaning that each step taken alone isn't that hard. And we just keep checking the boxes. So one is just collect more. So number one, if you're collecting less than 100% of your net production, you got to collect all of it. So we have gross production, we write some off, we have net production. That's your maximum collectible amount. You need to collect 100% of that. Just minimum requirement. People owe you money, you got to collect it. That's the number one way to increase because you've now collected more with the same amount of patients.
Yeah, but I have Susie up the front and she collects 96%. Come on.
It's pretty good. But it's 4% bad. So do the math. Take 4% of your gross production. 4% of your net production. That should be in your pocket, and it's not. And 4% sounds, 96 out of 100 sounds pretty good. But then when you do the math and say 4% of that $1.3 million, like that's a lot of money.
Right.
We've got to collect 100, if not 100 plus of our net production. Once write-offs are hard enough, write-offs take away our profit margin already. We can't afford not to collect 100% of what we are owed. Okay, because there's write-offs and so forth. And so that's number one, is just get into that mindset of, hey, we're going to collect all of this. We're going to work with Susie about her mindset and her relationship with money. And we're going to get the new norm to be 100%.
Right.
And we're going to train our patients that this is how it works in our office. And you'll be amazed how quickly your patients will fall in line.
What's number 2?
Number 2, do more per visit. This is your check average. I love that analogy. You have a reservation for a table of 6 at 8 o'clock. Get them or encourage them or inspire them to do more dentistry, eat more food, have more expensive, comprehensive care. Now, how do we do that? Very ethically. This is not a non-negotiable. We're obviously only going to diagnose care that they need. But I want your patients to think in terms, and you, dentist, to think in terms of treatment phases versus appointments. So if I'm a patient and I know there's 3 phases to my comprehensive care, I'm going to do infection control, and then I'm going to do restorative, and then I'm going to do the comprehensive smile makeover, those 3 phases. I'm going to think in phases. And instead of thinking, I have my first appointment, it's $3,000, and my second appointment's $4,000, and my third appointment's going to be $500 I'm going to pay, I'm thinking, I got a $9,000 treatment plan. I'm going to write a check. I'm going to pay for it. I've got 4 appointments. I'm going to go get that work done. That's number 1, is of how to increase the per visit check average. And what that helps you to do, Dennis, is be way more efficient. Instead of doing phase 1 in 7 appointments, because we're trying to limit this appointment value and we're worried about what they're going to think, and so we're going to keep it down. We're just going to sell a phase of treatment. We're going to get done as fast as humanly possible. And that is going to crank up not only the amount of care that you diagnose and sell, but then your per visit average, which is like your restaurant check average.
Yeah, I love that. Can I just piggyback on that too?
Please do.
I love how you said, like, stop trying to just present what you think they would say yes to. You know, a lot of times we get in our head about, like, we know a lot about them and they've had some hardships, and that's all well and good. And you should have a heart like that. But your heart should first be in the place of, let me help you with, you know, what I think would help you stay healthy. And then you can decide where to go with this. You know, there's so many people that have taught this before, but your only commitment to a patient is to tell them the truth every time. Your job is not to figure out what they're going to say yes to, if they're going to cry, if they're going to be overwhelmed, if they're going to say no. Always say, I'm going to just tell patients the truth every single time. And the cool thing is, you get to decide. Bob Barges, if you're listening, shout out. Like, I love when he says this. Hey, there's only 3 things you need to know. It's your money, it's your mouth, and it's your time. I'm just the referee here. Every time you come in, I'm going to tell you the truth. You get to decide in my practice, and you can watch patients walk out of the operatory and go, he's so nice. And he doesn't really care if they say yes or no, but he's going to tell you the truth each time. I think a lot of times what we do is we do the wallet biopsy, and we don't think people can afford this, and we know too much. We get too much in our heads about what they will say yes to instead of what is the right thing to do. So good stuff. What's number 3? Go ahead.
Well, before we go on to number 3, let's layer on one more thought on number 2. So in order to do more per visit, how do we track that? I'm just going to say, if nothing else, just track diagnosed work per month, like the total dollar figure of new diagnosed work per month. When that goes up, the ability to do more per visit goes up with it. Without that going up, you cannot do more per visit.
Right.
And so if nothing else, if you're going to start with one thing. So a lot of dentists are like, boy, I don't know, I can't do that. The only way I'm going to be able to do that, Barrett and Kirk, is I got to go to all this CE. It's going to take me 2 years to run through Pinky, Dawson, Spear, Coys. Yes, do that. And just diagnose more, sell more. Now, what I don't want to hear is that you tip a patient up in the recare chair and you bombard them with a bunch of work. That's not how to sell more. I'm going to say, tip them up and say, I'm seeing some things. I don't have the time you deserve to explain it. Here's what I want to do. I want to bring you back for a consultation. The way to increase your PPV is talk to patients in the consult room and educate them on the phases of treatment. And
Right.
so you don't need to like spend $50,000 in the next 3 months to get the skill up. Yeah, you're going to have to do that over time, but you can start right now by getting people in the consult room, talking to them about their mouth, showing them pictures and scans, and then diagnosing what you see and talking to the patient in phases.
Right. Now, if you're a wuss like me and you're thinking, okay, well, I left to yourself, you won't do this. What Barrett's saying is absolutely true. Improve your diagnosis month by month. The real how to support what Barrett said is to have one of your chairside assistants say to you, okay, listen, I listened to that podcast, and Dr. Straub, I'm going to be tracking how much you diagnose every day. And I'm going to let you know at the end of the month how much you diagnose. And you're going to do better. Okay. And I'm going to hold you accountable to that, because your first thought when you hear Barrett is like, yeah, I'll try. No, you will do. There is no try. So with having a good assistant track what you diagnose on a daily basis and tallying it at the end of the month, it becomes your own personal report card of whether or not you're on track. And if you have a really good assistant, which you should all have a really good assistant, she will kick your butt and go, why did you do that? She's got bone loss on the left side. You didn't even talk about the bone loss. Come on. It's really fun when you can have somebody hold you accountable to doing the right things.
Right. And so if you're a dentist and you go and pull the report on diagnosed work, in the month of August, last month, you diagnosed $50,000. How are you going to produce $100,000 next month? The math doesn't add up. And
Right.
so we've got to be realistic. If we're setting production goals of, $120,000 a month of production, but we're only diagnosing 50 and we're wondering why we can't reach our production goals, that's one of the causes. So we have to look a little deeper and understand what each number is telling us versus just focusing on new patients and production like 85% of the dentists out there.
Right. And I have to say this because Pete Dawson passed away at the age of 89, but I swear he's like tapping me on the shoulder all the time because Pete, I hear you. Okay. Pete's like, okay, listen, it's not about the money. It's not all about the dentistry. The bottom line is you probably have a practice. Within your practice, you have 2 or 3 practices within your practice of dentistry that's never even been talked about. It's just sitting right there. Just talk about it, would you please? And you're going to find what Barrett said is absolutely true. So, Good stuff.
Yeah.
What's the third way I can increase?
Number 3, add procedures to the menu so patients have more to choose from. Ooh. Now, don't hear me wrong. I don't want anyone to do any care that they're not qualified or skilled to do. But if you're at a place where like, I'm maxed out, I'm doing everything I can, and I'm only doing crowns and fillings, we may want to look at the other procedures that can help differentiate yourself. Invisalign orthodontics, oral conscious sedation, endo, anything that you can do within the scope of care, and you can do at a high level that's appropriate in the general practice. Sometimes we do have to add procedures if we are going to attain the production and revenue goals that we have.
Yeah. I can't say enough about this because there are people we see that add a lot of procedures. And while we're not huge fans of becoming the ultimate super dentist, you might be listening to this and you might say, I want to become the super dentist. Well, good for you. Again, this is the cool thing about this profession. You can do it however you want to do it. I feel strongly it's got to check the joy box, because if you're doing a lot of procedures that you're making a lot of money at and you just don't enjoy them, there's some compensation that you're going to have to pay for that at some point. So I do like the idea of adding procedures to the menu that your patients can choose from, that you've learned how to do them, you're good at them, you're efficient at them, and they do check the joy. It does check the joy box for you. So you're going to see that ultimately compound.
And
you're going to feel better.
Here's a good filter. If there's procedures that you're not referring to for, and you're not doing it, something's got to give. Right? So we can talk about endo. We can talk about perio. We can talk about implants. We can talk about something as simple as whitening trays, bruxism guards, topical fluoride on elderly people with exposed roots. If we're not referring, then as the first line of defense in a general dentist, then we're missing our ethical obligation if we're not doing it. So find those areas where I'm not referring, but I'm not doing it either. And either you got to start referring or start doing it. And there's a lot of easy, simple, no need to go to a weekend course codes out there that you should and could and can be doing.
Yeah. I love it. I absolutely love it. I almost feel like we should have a countdown. What's number 4? Survey says, like, what's the 4th way to improve APV?
Schedule the unscheduled treatment.
Right.
We all have a list. Dentrix, EagleSoft, all of them printed out. What's the list of all the patients that have treatment diagnosed? It's been treatment planned in their chart and they're not scheduled for it. The treatment coordinator and the administrative team, that list should be on their desk, marked up with pen and pencil, constantly calling these folks to get them in. These are people that have been presented care. You have openings in your schedule, get them in. That's a great way to increase your PPV, production per visit, production per day, and annual patient value.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest things you can do is just create a follow-up system for that. So if you talk about treatment and people don't schedule some time to follow. Say you should have a team member that's really good. Now we've got extensive resources in our Best Practice Association that are bigger than this, but a simple thing that you can do is have a team member say, I know you want to think about it. What day would be a good day to follow up with you about this? Because I want to make sure we've answered all of your questions. And you just keep them in the schedule somehow. Because if you let them walk out of the practice, it's just kind of like they're just going to float in the universe. So create some type of a follow-up system. Beautifully.
Absolutely. And if you don't, if you're taking the fact that they're not scheduled as it's not a no, unless they flat out said no, and that should be documented, then you're ultimately just waiting until 6 months till they come in, at best 6 months. And then you're going to kind of start over because 6 months is a long time and you're going to have to refresh their memory about this was treatment plan and yada, yada, yada. So we got to keep this. You've diagnosed it. And to Kirk's point, I love the asking permission for a day. Then they know you're going to be following up. So schedule unscheduled treatment.
Yeah, as you can see, like if you do all of these, you're going to see your APV go up. What's number 5?
All right, let's not let patients leave without their next appointment scheduled.
What people do? People do that?
People do that all the time.
Of course they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So great patients, and they're really good at confusing you. Really good about I get out of here. I'm going to be late. Blah blah blah. I think you've really got to tighten up your system and make sure not only in hygiene but also in restorative. Make sure they always leave. It's got to be part of your checklist. And here's where the cool part is: you can start to filter your practice. There are some patients that you would rather not schedule because they're damaging dollars to your practice. You don't have to stalk them, but the good ones, which you'll identify in the morning huddle, you're going to say, okay, all of these patients have to leave with their appointment scheduled for their next visit, because the best time to do anything is when they're right here. You don't have a great patient scheduled. You're utilizing time, resources, and energy of your team up front to stalk this patient, find them, get them back, make sure that when they leave, you can also look in their eyes when they're scared. Whether or not they're committed. There's a big difference between compliance and commitment. And you as a team member, as a dentist, you want to make sure you have their commitment to coming back.
Yeah, and it's such an important point. And so part of it is automated habits, right? The hygienist in her chair doesn't let them leave without scheduling next visit.
Yeah.
Right. We're not going to even take the patient up to the front desk. The other one is, back to comprehensive diagnosis, back to treatment planning in phases versus appointments. I always, if you're presenting a high dollar treatment plan, it's not always reasonable to expect every patient to say yes on the spot and schedule. A lot of people, myself included, need to think on something. So I would never say, okay, you go think on it. We'll call you. We'd always give a reason to come back. Hey, okay, you're going to think on it. Your first visit, it's no charge to you. We're going to come back. We're going to answer questions. We're going to review financial arrangements. We're going to take some impressions to get the treatment planning started. Or we're going to take a couple x-rays. Or we're going to do something easy. So the patient's like, I'm coming back. I have a set appointment. It's no charge, but I get time to think and then bring back questions. So anytime you keep that connection, or you always say, Kirk, keep them tethered to your practice. Don't let your patients go float in the wind. Keep them coming back in, even if it's for quick, easy appointments until they make a decision. Yeah,
and because we're geeks about this is what we do all day long. So I'm going to give you a quick hack on this one. Talk about tethered. The best tether is the bib. So it's kind of like the seatbelt. You should make it a rule in your practice. The bib never comes off until one thing happens. They've scheduled their next appointment. Because you take the bib off of a patient, they look like a great defensive lineman with a swim move, and like they'll sneak right by you, right out the door. So, and if somebody touches the rib, say to a patient, don't say, don't, no, you don't touch the bib. I touch the bib. You're going to slowly change patients' behavior over time, and it just makes it an easy easy like visual cue that, hey, we got to do one thing before you take that off. So good stuff. What's number 6, Barrett?
It's number 6. And this is kind of a unique one. I want us to think about perio health. And I want us to think about how often patients come in and who's directing that and what historically has caused that. And I want us to think about the word good versus not that bad. And I'm going to make the hypothesis that there's a lot of dental patients out there that are coming in a dental practice every 6 to 8, 9 months because it's not that bad versus good. And so my dental practice was very proactive periodontally. I would have put my patients' periodontal health up against just about any practice in the world. And the number one reason is our goal, patients and ours, was good perio health. And so we had half our patients coming every 3 months. And what good meant was like almost no bleeding, no 5 millimeter pockets, like true lack of inflammation. Versus like, it's not that bad. You got an area here, you got an area. Let's check it again in 6 months. And we all do that from time to time. I'm not saying we don't, but it's okay to bring someone in every 3 to 4 months, even if they don't have 5 and 6 and 7 millimeter pockets with, stable, heavy previous bone loss. And so it's just a mindset thing. Are we keeping patients on the 6 month because they're, quote, not that bad, or are they actually healthy with a complete lack of inflammation? And if not, if they have that, it's okay to bring them back.
Yeah.
Sooner than 6 months. And what does that do? It alleviates so much of the pressure on new patients. It's better dental health. It's better care. And you're providing, it's both good for the patient's health and business, which is always a great place to be when good business also equals good health for your patients.
Yeah, and I absolutely love this. And so just to give you further perspective and piggyback on what Barrett said, in any practice we coach, the 4,000 codes go up. You know what happens restoratively. You can see patients are starting to value. They end up doing more restorative work, and the result is better across the board. So that's number one. Because the reason we tell you that is I don't want you to think this is a selfish push. Obviously, you're going to grow perio, and yes, it's going to grow some value and some of your collections and all, but really what's going to happen is your patients are going to get healthier. The other thing you have to do is you got to make this as simple as possible. And so this is, again, probably need 30 minutes for this one, but I'll give you a quick hack or a quick tip on this one is, like, you got to get patients involved in this. Barrett, I've heard you talk about this many times, and I've heard so many other dentists in our community say, listen, bleeding points are a big one. You get a great patient like Mrs. Finelli, and she comes in, she has 5 bleeding points, and you go, hey, listen, you got 5 today. Our goal is to get you to 4, then to 3. And then she comes in, a few months later, she's like, Dr. Straub, I'm down to 3 bleeding points. Like, now I'm going to get to 2. And now you can see that she's part of the journey, and it's just not you trying to hard sell this whole perio thing. Don't you think, Barrett?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the risk in someone listening to this podcast and trying to apply it right away is a black and white delivery of all this. Again, to the analogy of I tip Mrs. Finelli up and I'm like, now you're going to come back in 3 months and you got 4 crowns, you got this and you got that, and it's $12,000 and we're going to get you back. That's not at all how we do this. We're human beings. Let's use some emotional intelligence. Let's use some self-awareness. Let's talk to the patients like a human being in the consult room. Let's explain what we're seeing and feeling in our diagnosis. And by doing that, your PPV and APV go up. Be like, if nothing else, what we're going to say, if you wrapped all this in one tiny bow, would be sit down and talk with your patients about their mouth double the time you currently are. And you're going to do way more dentistry. And you do it outside of the recare chair. I'm a I talk about that all the time, but get them out of that darn chair and talk to them face knee to knee, eye to eye in a place that's not so fear inducing like a dental operatory.
You have to describe where that place is. Where would I take them?
Consult room.
Oh, okay. Why?
Because it's not in the dental chair.
It's not in the dental chair.
So if you're a patient, you're in the dental chair, they're only hearing about 10% of what you're saying. They're thinking about so many other things. And so I love the mental switch, whether it's right after the recare exam or even better to give them a couple of days and come back, and where you have to give the patient an opportunity to succeed. And by succeed, I mean being in the right mindset to get curious about their dental care, consider their options, and be a partner with you, the dentist, in a creative solution to their problems. And no human being can do that right after being tipped up from having a dental cleaning.
So well said. So our goal with this is to give you some great to-dos that make a huge impact on your practice and your patient health. And so hope you guys enjoyed this. Share this with your team. If you struggle with learning more about this is what we do. We also have some great resources in the Best Practices Association. We've got an app coming shortly that'll help you even further with this. But Barrett, give us some final thoughts on APV.
My final thought, I was just thinking about this, is APV doesn't have to be a dramatic effort. Think about if you increase your APV by $100, do the math on how many active patients you have and times that by $100, and your revenue will greatly increase, as will the quality of your dental care. So again, like Kirk said, it's a little bit of improvement every time. And we've given a lot of different solutions and a lot of scenarios, and pick the 3 that resonated with you and just go to town and start. I always say, start it on Monday. And if you're listening to us on Monday, start it on Tuesday. And just get going and track that number every week, every month. And it should be going up. When it goes up, good things are going to happen to your practice.
Yeah, I have the good fortune of working with Barrett every single day, and I think I could go this far as say this is your single favorite KPI because it has so much leverage. It's the one KPI that makes so many things better in that respect. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's it's the magic KPI because there's so many other metrics that go into it.
Right.
And so in one number, we know so much about dental practice in one number alone. It's just so powerful. Now, the challenging part of APV is it takes a little higher level of thought to be able to affect it, because we need to know gross production, we get what that means. Collections, we get what that means. APV, there's lots of different things that can improve it. And therein is the power, but it also requires just a little bit of more thought on the front end if you're going to be able to improve it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, brother, for being on. I always appreciate you having on. Yeah. So stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. Make sure you find out what your APV is. Spend some time working with your team to create some value and educate them around how important this number is, and then ask for their help. You're going to see your team has some incredible input on how we can create more value, improve the health of this number, and you're going to see everything get better. If you struggle with this, reach out to us. We have a great team of coaches. We also have our Best Practices Association. We're going to be bringing more and more of this stuff your way. And we're just so excited you guys keep showing up. If you enjoyed today, do us a favor, hit the share button, share this with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions for things you guys want to see, and we're going to keep bringing it. And until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.